The headlines read that the Walt Disney Company is terminating Pixar employees, but that doesn't even begin to scratch the surface. Although you may not find out about this at other places, the media not connecting the dots, well, that's sort of what they don't do all the time, isn't it? Guess what? There's way more to this story. There's way more for studios like Lucasfilm to fear from the purge of Pixar. And folks, we are here to explain entertainment, keep you ahead of the culture curve. Today doing so with an awesome panel of X-Wing, Culture Casino, and Lorne of ThatParkPlace.com. Gentlemen, welcome back to the show. We are going to have a fascinating conversation as we dive into what is happening at the Walt Disney Company and how the media is underreporting it as per the norm. Before we do so, folks, if you like content like this, consider clicking the like button, share, subscribe, and you can stick it to the algorithms when you click it. We're talking about the notification bell. All right, gentlemen, let's go straight into the content of what's happening. Now, for a while, we've been reporting that the Walt Disney Company is in a staggered position. They don't know what to do. Robert Iger was supposed to be the golden boy, back to save the day and redeem the company from the evil clutches of Bob Chapek. But that has not exactly happened. And as a result, because the Walt Disney Company is reeling, they are reeling off much of their content from Disney Plus, cutting it, wiping it out. You have heard us talk about the wiping of Willow, and it's not stopping there. We have now confirmation of the rumor that I have been reporting for the past few weeks, that in fact, this was just the beginning. Disney will continue cutting content into the next quarters. I have also been reporting that I have heard that Disney will continue the terminations of personnel and employees. That not yet fully confirmed. But here's the article, this out of Variety by Todd Spangler. Disney to take $1.5 billion content write-off charge in June quarter after pulling dozens of titles from streaming services. And here we are, the sub-headline, the subtitle here, that's really where the news is. Mouse House says it could incur an additional $400 million charge for TV and movie removals. So let's skip ahead. We know about this $1.5 billion. We know they're cutting tons of content, and we know that they're cutting content from Hulu, not just Disney Plus, and that Comcast may be very angry about that because Comcast may believe that Disney is attempting to lower the value of Hulu in an effort to try to pull the price down when they buy it. But here we go. This paragraph is important. Disney said it's continuing to review content on streaming platforms and currently anticipates additional produced content will be removed from its DTC and other platforms, largely during the remainder of its third fiscal quarter. As a result, Disney currently estimates it incur further impairment charges of up to about $400 million related to produced content. Now, folks, to explain that, what that means is that Disney is attempting to get tax write-downs, claiming that they are being damaged by having to pull these pieces of content from their streaming services. And it's not just the $1.5 billion that was announced. No, it's $400 additional million. And by the way, I want to hand it to the panel now, but here's my thought on this one. I think this is being, shall we say, ran through the public relations test here. There's a numerical significance to this announcement. I think that they're trying not to announce $500 million because that would push them to $2 billion in tax write-downs, and that might be worthy of bigger headlines, demonstrating that the company is in more trouble. So, gentlemen, we start here before we even get to Pixar. People need to understand this is a company that is doing everything they can to cut costs. They're like an addict scrambling for a penny in the couch because they are going to buy Hulu, and they don't have the cash, we believe. X-Wing, what do you make of the fact that Disney is not yet done cutting away content?
So it's kind of incredible to watch, honestly, because I don't think that what they're doing is anything out of the norm for any corporation when it comes to where do we need some money? All right, let's shed what we don't need and we can take some write-offs. Totally fine. The problem here is the magnitude of what's going on. So I think it was Mike that was talking about, it was in the last video or something like that, that it's rumored there was something like $207 million in working capital for the company at one point. That is scary for them. And the only thing I can think of right now is a ship sailing towards an island, and they're throwing everything that's not hooked to the wall off the boat. They're like, just get it off. We have to make it to the island. But the interesting part for me is I don't know what that island is. I don't know
So
where they're going to go or how they're going to get there. I don't see a happy place on the horizon. So sure, they're dumping everything they can to try to keep the ship afloat, but where are they going?
they're going to Hulu. Now, why they are so dead set on Hulu, that remains to be seen. I'm not sure why they have determined so strongly that they have to have it. But now with the announcement they've made, they have to have it. I mean, they've essentially locked themselves in a corner.
Yeah.
Culture, the way I have described this is that it reminds me of someone who has no emergency fund, right? It's a family with $8 in the bank account, and they want to buy that car. The car is Hulu.
Sell the toaster.
Gosh darn it, yeah, they'll throw the toaster out the window, garage sale, estate sale, sell whatever you've got, sell the couch. It doesn't matter. They want that car.
The problem is, and again, I mean, they've removed some leverage by making it so public and seemingly desperate. They've put themselves in a bad position when it comes to negotiations with Comcast. This will definitely end up in, arbitration at the very least, if not an actual lawsuit. I mean, because
there's a gulf of millions and billions and billions of dollars between what Comcast wants and Disney says they'll give.
Yeah, tens of billions of dollars, actually. And when you look at it, there's no win here. Hulu doesn't necessarily have, brand-friendly content. They've gotten rid of a bunch of the programs on Hulu itself, that Disney had put together that was not necessarily Disney brand quality content because, they're maybe desperately trying to get back to the appearance of a family company. But their desperation is telling because, as it's been reported regularly and very recently, it looks as if park attendance is down at a time of year when it is usually incredibly busy in the parks, and specifically Florida, which is the listen to me talk, the crown jewel of the company.
They have the bonus admission for June, right? That was the thing that just came out.
They've got handouts for pass holders. They have a bunch of different discounts for locals. It is, it's a very strange place to be. And they are so desperate for money. And again, X-Wing brought it up, that, they don't have it. There's nothing in the checkbook. They have $230 million, $207 million, whatever it happens to be. But that is not enough money other than to keep the company running for another quarter. And you're right. I mean, your speculation, I'm 100% on board with the fact that they are desperately trying not to say $2 billion, by saying, well, an additional $400 million in the next month, maybe.
Exactly. But, you really have to. I mean, this boggles the mind, the amount of content it takes to reach nearly $2 billion in tax write-downs. I mean, this is a massive amount of content that they're removing. Lauren, we saw a few days ago, Tony Gilroy come out and praise Kathleen Kennedy while he is bored, not able to continue working on Andor Season 2 because of the writer's strike. I'm looking at this, and my analysis here has been that I wonder if he's not worried. Andor did not perform well in the ratings. Disney does not seem to be in a place where they can lose money anymore. And I wonder if some of these writers, perhaps not he himself necessarily, but I wonder if many of these other writers are concerned that Disney may cut some of their major content pieces that you would not normally suspect. So how long do you think it is until we see perhaps a major production studio lose a piece of content on Disney Plus, i.e. Marvel, Pixar, Lucasfilm, etc.? Besides Willow, Lucasfilm managed that already.
Well, I have to ask some clarifying questions here because I don't know how some of this works. They're pulling this content off so that they can take a tax write-down. And I think there's an important point to be made there if I understand this part correctly. It's not as though they are clawing back $1.5 or $1.9 billion in cash. They are reducing the amount of taxable income that they have to pay taxes on. So it's not like you're even getting $1.5 to $2 billion, and they need to have somewhere between 10 to 20 to accomplish the Hulu acquisition. So the question that I have, what do you got, Culture?
Let me just add, this is just a content cut. We're not talking about the Star Cruiser or any of the other cuts that they've made. So
where they assessed what did they assess on the Star Cruiser?
300 million
for 2 quarters. for
Yeah.
2 quarters of not having it running.
And they're also supposedly looking at possibly selling Queen's catalog as well. They are definitely desperately trying to raise money.
That is a fantastic point. The media is not connecting the reason that they're willing to sell assets like that. Like I said, they're like an addict selling anything they can.
Yeah.
Right. But I mean, the thing is that they have to raise, it's obvious that it is going to go to arbitration for the valuation of Hulu. But I think ballpark, if Disney is saying we want to pay 10 and Comcast is saying we want 20, you're going to fall somewhere in between there. $15
Well,
billion.
Comcast is saying something like what, 30, around 30, perhaps?
Well, I thought
28,
it was
27.
I thought it was-
They're valuing Hulu at, I believe, 70 billion plus, which puts it in line with the Fox sale. And Disney would be on the hook for a third of that.
Either way, if their cash on hand is it's not even $1 billion. It's like you have to raise at a minimum 10 to 15 to 20 billion with a B. And these tax write-downs don't get you anywhere close to recovering that amount of cash. So that's issue number one. I think
pause there, Lauren, because we need to. There's another question that the audience will have here. We always assume, that we're going to have many new viewers who have not heard us say this before. Many people may wonder, well, what's the problem? Disney can just take out a loan. And the answer to that we've covered in the past, but this is a terrible time for corporations to take out corporate loans. The interest rate is extremely high.
What? The percentage is great. It's fine.
That's right. Go ahead, Mouse. Go ahead.
This isn't even recovering. This is attempting to retain at this point.
Exactly. Lauren, your second point?
Yeah, I think the way that you have to deal with this, and this is where my question came in, is they're having to pull this content down. I'm assuming if they're going to take this loss on this, that means they can't put that content back up. So is that permanently, or is there an amount of time during which they can't put this content up? Because what they ought to be doing is trying to license it to some other service so that they can at least make money there. But if they're trying to
license it, they can't license it. However, that is a tricky question, Lauren, because typically you would say no, but we are in unprecedented streaming times. And here's where this gets tricky. Jonathan Kasdan, the guy who was over Willow, he has had an unparalleled track record of failure.
And he's totally into having his content pulled down.
Absolutely. Totally into it.
Guy digs it.
Bit of a sadist.
But he comes out and says that, this will not be the end of Willow. It'll pop up somewhere again. He's happy about it. It's like going to the Disney Vault. And literally, the Disney Plus Twitter account had to correct him in a response on Twitter and say, we have no information about this property ever appearing again. And so, I think that comes down to what you're talking about. We don't know. We don't know what can happen 50 years down the road. We just know that for now, they're being taken down with the tax write-downs as if they have absolutely zero serviceable income potential for the future.
Well, I think the only way you raise the kind of capital they need is they need new revenue streams from somewhere. And
but you have to have revenue to create those revenue streams. It takes money to make money, and they don't have any money. Well, and every time they dump money into something, they're either breaking even or losing at this point.
If you're talking about content, they've already got the content. So if they're not pulling it down, they need to stop the exclusivity on Disney Plus. That's the only way that you can make some of this work for you.
I'm going to introduce the idea that was actually something that Mr. Iger touched on. The Weatherman actually talked about possibly licensing some of the Disney catalog out to other services and perhaps pay channels and things like that. So there is a chance that could happen. But Disney's they're still in a position where they're spending money that needlessly to put content on their streaming service. I'm pointing directly at the Indiana Jones films because I believe those are still controlled by Paramount.
Correct.
So in order to support this fifth film, they're still spending money.
Still spending. But let's take a look at where they're not spending any longer. This coming to us out of Reuters. This is the big deal. This is what's on the thumbnail. But again, we need to connect this to the broader picture so that the audience understands what's really going on. We're here to explain entertainment for you. This out of Reuters by Don Chmielewski. Exclusive. Walt Disney's Pixar targets Lightyear execs among 75 job cuts. and the names which have been removed from Pixar are no small potatoes. I also want to say that we take absolutely no joy in people losing their jobs, especially when it involves people who probably very much loved working at Pixar, who their identities were rolled into this to some degree. It pains us to know that they have pain, and so we do not want to dance on the graves or to take joy in the loss of others. That is not the type of channel we are. But we do need to cover it. Walt Disney's Pixar Animation Studios has eliminated 75 positions, including those of 2 executives behind box office disappointment Lightyear. Sources said on Saturday the first significant job cuts at the studio in a decade. By the way, Lightyear is a film that flopped so terribly that it likely lost $100 million and then opened the floodgates for Strange World later on to lose even more. The cuts included Lightyear director Angus MacLane, a 26-year animator, who was part of the senior creative team on such acclaimed films as Toy Story 4 and Coco. Here's another big one. Galen Sussman, producer of Lightyear, also departed. She had been at Pixar since the release of the original Toy Story movie in 1995. Again here, this is a big, big deal because these are big, big people at Pixar. You are dealing with 2 of the biggest individuals at the studio, 2 of the most beloved people at the studio. Sussman even is featured in many a story out of Pixar about how she supposedly saved Toy Story 2. Now, that's a little bit overblown, and we won't go into the details of it, but just suffice to say, these are not people down in the middle management area. And it's not just that they're being removed from Pixar. It's not just that they're being fired from Pixar. I think this is sending out a signal to everyone else at every other studio. If these people can be fired, if a lady who helped create Toy Story, the original, saved Toy Story 2 allegedly, worked on Toy Story 3, worked on everything else at Pixar, if she can be fired over one film losing money, then all of you are on the hot seat. What say you, panel?
I'll defer.
You remember National Lampoon's magazine, where they had the cover that said, "Buy this magazine and we'll shoot this dog"?
No.
I don't remember that one specifically, but that seems to match the humor of the magazine, yes.
Yeah, it had a photo of a very worried-looking dog with a gun to its temple, and that was the selling angle for the first issue, I believe. In this case, Pixar's the dog, and Lucasfilm is the potential purchaser. I think in this case, it's been really interesting to me that in this last round of layoffs, Lucasfilm went untouched. And I think Pixar is being made the example of to say, you have one last opportunity. You need to get things up to snuff right now, or this is what happens to you.
How are they on the block more than Lucasfilm? That's what I don't really understand.
Well, that's a fantastic point. But X-Wing, I think this is actually a little bit broader. I like Lauren's point perfectly, but I also want to add that I think it's a message to Disney Animation Studios as well. I think everybody at the company now knows that the company is willing to cut to the marrow if necessary, if you can't perform. And it doesn't matter what you did 5 years ago. It's what have you done for me lately. Culture, I saw the wheels turning. Did you have a comment on that?
No, all I was going to do is add to basically what you just said, which is there are no sacred cows any longer. I mean, and that does, lead to some very interesting questions when it comes to Lucasfilm. Now, I'm going to present an idea that we didn't know until today that these people had departed back in May during the bloodbath when they lost 7,000 folks.
Exactly.
We didn't know until today. We don't know that we don't know that anyone has or has not been dismissed from Lucasfilm. We don't know. And I would say that not only is this a warning shot, it's a direct threat, because you've had multiple bombs coming out of these studios, and Lightyear was so egregious and so bad and so unreleasable in 14 markets and not something that the audience was looking for. It didn't make sense. They didn't know who their audience was, or they forgot. And, the people that paid the price were people that they thought were untouchable.
Well, let me throw this to the panel, because this is one of the things that's so interesting about what is happening. So Lightyear was the catalyst used to get rid of Bob Chapek. Remember this?
Yeah.
Remember that the Florida legislation happened. Then Pixar comes out and says publicly that their CEO, Bob Chapek, would not allow them to feature representation, that they were being stymied from including this sort of thing. And, then that kicks off the whole thing. And you would assume that therefore Pixar was carrying the water of Bob Iger, who replaced Chapek then, came back into the saddle after Chapek was removed. Now look at this. I really do think, guys, that this is contributing majorly to the lack of confidence in the company for Bob Iger now. Because it takes something to really drop this man off of his seat of charisma. But think about it. These people carried the water for him. Now he's firing them.
So that was going to be that was going to be my point right off the back of what Culture said, is that are we actually releasing the right people to move the company forward? Are we releasing the people that are responsible for it, or are we releasing the people that carried out the orders of somebody else? That's my big question. So you have somebody who's involved with Disney since Toy Story, and you're letting that person go. Do you really think that was the person responsible for propagating this project? And I don't know, unfortunately. I try to speak from the fans' heart more than you guys are all factual and incredible in that regard.
You're too humble.
But to be honest with you guys, I have to wonder when I see news like that and I see somebody who was on the original Toy Story project that helped create that and all of those things that we're so attached to, they were let go because of Lightyear. Are you firing the right person for the right reasons, or are you looking just to get rid of somebody? It doesn't sit well with me.
So X-Wing, you're exactly right. I've got to get these two in, and then Lauren, I want your thought on it. Iger came out at the J.P. Morgan Summit where he spoke. Josh DeMauro, head of Parks Division, also spoke. Iger said at that, this is him talking to investors, says to them, I think you're going to see the strength of Disney when The Little Mermaid comes out. The Little Mermaid, now he had to have seen it. He says that to investors. Now we're at a point where that is just, the media has even turned against it now. Right, the narrative is blown. Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse is taking off. It's destroyed their narrative. And that movie's going to flop. So you've got that issue. Then you've got the issue with the Indiana Jones movie, where you have Iger going to the Cannes Film Festival, previewing this thing to the world 5 weeks ahead of its debut. Surely somebody had to know this was a stinker and it was going to destroy its box office to allow it to have anything less than an embargo that gets lifted 24 hours before it comes out. That was the strategy to have. I submit to you, X-Wing, and Lauren, I want your thought. It's Iger. Iger has lost his touch. The Midas touch is gone from the man that was Iger.
To be fair, Iger was riding the coattails of greater men for a long period of time. All the Weatherman did was acquisition, and he was blessed with the wonderful teams that came along with the Marvel properties, with the Star Wars and Lucasfilm properties, with the Pixar properties, until he started letting politics take a hand and eliminate the people who were essentially the leaders of those organizations.
Well, that has to be the downfall of Disney, is once he politicized the company circa 2016, and we don't need to go into why that was, but Lauren, you had some thoughts.
Oh, well, a couple actually. One is a question. I want to see if your guys' I guess two questions. I want to see if your recollection is the same as mine, because the time that I remember Disney being on the upswing when it came to entertainment, movies, was kind of something that came out of left field. Do you remember when they were producing Pirates of the Caribbean, The Curse of the Black Pearl?
I remember it. What in specificity?
Do you remember how everybody mocked the title of that movie and how everybody thought it was going to be a gigantic flop?
I didn't. I was so excited about that movie.
Really?
I remember some of that criticism, though. Yes,
I'm a prequel baby, though, so the totally different, viewpoint.
I'm talking pre-trailer. I remember talking to everybody. Everybody thought that this was going to be. It's like, what are they doing here? It's never going to work. And then it became this massive hit. And it was after that they started experimenting a little bit with movies and ended up on the upswing. And for a while there was a string of hits where it seemed like they could do no wrong. Now, part of that you could say is that I don't think Iger has ever really been involved all that much in the creative process. He puts
Thank
people
God.
in, yeah, he puts people in place that he thinks are going to lead the studio. He thinks these are the people that are the storytellers. You just need to get out of their way and let them do what they do. That's led us to some of the problems that we have now. But the other question that I wanted to ask you guys is,
Well, Lauren, before you do, let me give one quick comment on that, because you're exactly right. What I think has happened is that Iger was for so long so successful giving the power to the creatives because he had geniuses below him to carry that out.
Telling
The
him to
problem
get out
is,
of the way.
when you run off a John Lasseter, when you run off some of these other experts who, they're at the top of the Pareto principle, man. They are the ones who can deliver for you, and there are so few of them in the entire world. When you run them off for frivolous reasons, then the new creatives that you bring in who are partisan, let's say, and coming out of this new wave Ivy League school, right? Yeah. You can't just say to the creatives, "I'll get out of your way and let you make stuff," because they make propaganda instead. That's all I had to say on that one.
I agree. I have another question for you, though, and that is, putting on your messaging hat from the Disney standpoint, you don't want to spook investors when you're doing layoffs and things by doing layoffs everywhere, because that looks like, oh my God, every portion of our company has got problems, and you don't want to message that. So that may have something to do with how long it's taking us to find out who's been laid off where.
Right.
But if you look at it that way, you have Disney Animation Studios, you have Pixar, you have Lucasfilm, you have Marvel Studios. In what order do you do the layoffs? In what order do you start messaging, we're having problems here?
You don't. There is no order. You lay it out all in one spot to try to make yourself look as impartial as humanly possible.
And I think the reason that we got the delayed information about these Pixar firings probably has to do with the severance process. I think probably there was a period of time where they were receiving funds from Disney, et cetera, and now that they've that has reached its end, perhaps that allowed them or an intermediary to reach out to the media and let them know, even though they're not giving a comment officially in the article.
Right. Yeah. Nobody could be reached for comment at all when we found out this news today, at least according.
Right, but wonder how that made it out there in the first place, right? We're not so naive to think that nobody had a system where they had a certain amount of degrees of separation to make this known.
Yeah, and to dive a little bit into what Lauren was asking, and I agree. I remember that people mocked the idea that Disney was going to make films based on their attractions, because at the same time they were muddling through that terrible Haunted Mansion film with Eddie Murphy. And
sorry, Eddie, it just didn't work.
It didn't work, but they struck gold, fortunately, that summer, only to flop that winter with the Mansion film. But it just and I remember making fun of the idea, and again, involved with Disney at that time very, 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 very closely, and I would say that it's an interesting idea that they were taking those risks. They don't do that anymore. They don't take creative risks. They don't have anybody that does that. And, they use a lot of repurposers, and a lot of deconstruction. And I think instead of making things, they break things. And I think that's, where all of these newfound creatives, that's where they shine. But that's not how you build a brand.
And that's what really scares me about the news that I'm hearing, that, Sussman's been there since 95 with Toy Story. Essentially, to me, and I always have to put it in my own frame of reference, that's like letting go of Doug Chiang at Star Wars.
Exactly. It's moving out the corporate wisdom and knowledge inside your studio. Now,
yeah.
Who knows?
And that's not a good sign. They say, we really want to take a look and make sure that we're making the stuff that's really going to please fans. And then you get rid of somebody who's been pleasing fans for the better part of 30 years. How does that make sense?
I'm telling you, I think it's a message. I think it says to everyone at Disney, we don't care what you've done for us. What did you do for us last year? What did you do for us 2 years ago? And if it wasn't good, you're gone.
The erasure of legacy.
Let's talk about why they started taking those risks when Iger came in. It was to get away from the strategy that Disney had been following, where they were making these direct-to-video sequels to their animated features.
And here we are again. You're exactly right.
And so that got Disney out of the doldrums because they were doing something new and they were doing it in live action. Now, in a way, that kind of led now to their live action remakes of their animated features that are doing terribly.
Right.
But I think maybe that's the wrong message that they got, is that they thought we just wanted live action everything, when what we really wanted was new IP.
Or new things, or new takes on things. They haven't been able to accomplish that. You're 100% right, Lon.
It's difficult to do when you're creatively bankrupt. Yeah, it's hard to make new stuff.
You can only repackage something so many times. There's only so many ways, unless you're Taco
Evil
Bell.
cannot create.
In which case, in Taco Bell, you can make 1,000 items out of the same ingredient somehow.
Yeah.
Do you think, and this is the last one I want to ask on this, do you think that the loss of what I call institutional knowledge with the people that that have been dismissed previously, and those that they're losing through the course of layoff, because you lose the people with the higher salaries because it saves you money, but all those people have epic levels of experience that cannot be replaced, especially when you no longer have a meritocracy that guides your company, in all of its different elements and realms. So what is this ultimately going to cost Disney down the road? Will they be worse off for a small monetary gain?
Well, I think what we're seeing already is that the company cannot produce at the level that is being asked of them. They simply lack what you're talking about. What was your terminology you used?
Institutional knowledge.
Yeah, the institutional knowledge. I mean, you think about this. A lot of people don't consider. So let's say you remove a genius, right? Let's say you move a 1 in a million person who has then 25 years of experience. And then once that person is gone, you say, okay, we're going to hand this over now to a 27-year-old who we hired through a DEI initiative, and we're going to let you take it away. And it's like, that doesn't work. You can't replace a legend with an average person who, at best, who doesn't have the experience that the legend had. It's just, none of this works. And so let's take a look now at our final article here, and I think this is what's telling us, the fear that has to be hitting Lucasfilm now, really and truly. And I will apologize if it doesn't happen, but our sources say that likely Kathleen Kennedy is short for the world in terms of Lucasfilm. But here's what it says: the force has left Lucasfilm. This is coming from Fortune. This is big to come from Fortune. What has gone wrong for the studio behind Star Wars and Indiana Jones, and how Disney's Bob Iger can salvage his $4 billion investment? Did Valiant Renegade write this thing? Hang on a second. This is
what an interesting turn of phrase there. That's
salvage it. Yes, it's like a home that's been burned, and can you possibly rebuild the thing?
Yeah.
So here's what it says: taking time out of his busy schedule running Disney, Bob Iger flew to the Cannes Film Festival in support of Harrison Ford's latest movie, even posting on social media snapshots of the aging action hero on the red carpet. Now, for those of you who have followed this channel, you know that there were many interesting things that happened as this screening took place. We won't go into it here now. Lucasfilm had just premiered the 5th installment in its Indiana Jones franchise, and a lot is riding on the fedora sporting, bullwhip toting archaeologist portrayed by the now 80-year-old Hollywood star, about to be 81. At nearly $300 million, it's actually about that. Dial of Destiny is one of the most expensive films ever made, and initial reviews suggest it could bomb big at the box office when it lands on June 30th. This goes on to talk about just how abysmal the management of Lucasfilm has been, what needs to happen to fix it. I recommend people go read this article, but here's what we're going to use it for the purposes of this conversation between all of us. Lightyear probably lost $100 million. Now we are looking at, and by the way, Lightyear had, we believe, a production budget of around $250 million. Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, we believe, has somewhere around $332 million production budget. It also has a huge marketing budget. It's not free to go to Cannes, by the way, and do all this.
Yeah.
We think this film needs, this is nuts. Although
Cannes isn't a charity film festival.
Yes, if we had Script Doctor here, he would tell you this is, even though this is nuts, it's not completely unprecedented. But we think this film needs $1 billion to make money, which is just insane. This film is currently projected to make something like half of that, and that is in the best of projections. Now, why do I bring all this up? Because if Lightyear cost two people who have been at Pixar for a very long time their jobs, and it lost $100 million, what happens at Lucasfilm if Indiana Jones loses them? Oh, let's just have fun. Let's just say it loses $300 million at the same time the company needs to buy Hulu and
Not a
cannot afford
damn
these kinds of
thing,
things.
Pro. Not a
X-Wing
damn
has
thing.
X-Wing has the counter position. He says that nobody at Lucasfilm is going to take the hit. X-Wing, tell us why.
Because I love the idea that people would be held responsible for their mistakes. But we have seen time and time and time again that doesn't happen. It never happens. People, you have a fiduciary responsibility to your investors to make money. That's your job. And they do not do it over and over and over again. The only time we've ever seen that ever happen in Disney was Bob Chapek. And then what did they do? They rolled it back and they brought the other guy that was losing them money in the first place. I do not understand the mentality. You have a fiduciary responsibility to make the fans happy. And then you make something and the fans are like, we don't like this. And they're like, that's your problem. Sorry, honey. No, it's your problem. And now we're seeing it play out.
X-Wing, let me play devil's advocate for just a minute.
I'm just going to take a breath.
I'm with you. I'm with you. Easy there.
Take a breath.
Question to you, though. Do you think that, like many others, perhaps having seen the destruction of a franchise, and now we're going to get a new destruction of a new franchise, and they already blew up Willow, so good job there.
Yep.
But do you think that perhaps you have Lucasfilm Stockholm Syndrome, where you're finding a coping mechanism to deal with the fact that they've not gone away yet, and you've decided that there's no reality out there because you want to defend yourself from the pain of how can they still remain, and so you don't want to get your hopes up at all.
Pro, I want you to look behind me. Okay, I am a
looking
poster child for Stockholm Syndrome. I'm a Star Wars fan. I'm still a Star Wars fan. I am the poster child for Stockholm Syndrome. I just the question for me isn't when is it going to happen? The question is how many mistakes can they make before they finally admit it? Because it's at the point now where they're running out of mistakes, and one thing is going to happen, or one thing's going to happen. One, Disney is literally going to go under, which I don't see happening, or at some point they're going to have to admit that they have made mistakes and fix it. And both of those seem equally impossible.
Lauren, has it gotten to the point, though, where it's kind of fun just because you never believe they can actually do anything so stupid and they still manage to jump the hurdle?
Is this fun? No, this isn't fun. This is like dealing with a screaming hangover after a bender that's gone on for way too long.
That you had nothing to do with somehow.
Right. But I do think something is different this time. Actually, it's several somethings. And I think that we need to be talking about more than just Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. I think we need to stop looking at this as Lucasfilm. It's a Disney problem. It's an Iger problem. And what they have, it's not what's going on in the immediate future or the recent past. It's actually what's going on in the future. What comes after Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny? You have Elemental. You have the Marvels. You have, there was one other that was coming out. I can't remember what it was.
Got big hopes for the Marvels.
Yeah.
All of these sound great. They're just going to do so well.
All of them are going to fail just as badly. Yeah. And right now, we're living in the era of Budweiser and Target. And I don't know if you've been looking at the Disney stock. It's come up just a little bit here in the last couple of days. But they were at, I think it was a 5-year low? That was
they tickled the 5-year low, yes.
Yeah, what was the 5-year? Was it like in the 80s?
97.
What's really bad, X-Wing, is that the 5-year low came when the pandemic hit and the market crashed. Yeah. There is no pandemic now, and yet they were.
Yeah, they were fooling with the bottom.
So
by the way, we're not going to give financial advice. Please don't take financial advice from us. If you want financial advice, seek out your own financial advisor in your own local area who is certified, qualified, and whom you can trust.
But my response to X-Wing is that this is different, and the words that you said were the most important ones because they're going to become very relevant in the near future. Fiduciary responsibility. those institutional investors are not going to be having any more of this. And I think
They don't
that
care
Iger's-
about morality.
I don't think they do, but they do care about money.
Yes.
And right now, none of this is working for them. Nothing. They have nothing to point to, and Universal's about to eat their lunch. I don't see a way that they can crawl out of this easily. I really hope they find a way, but I think it's about time that those investors are actually going to start calling. I mean, you've seen the annual shareholders meeting, and you've seen the quarterly earnings calls.
Yeah, the shareholders aren't happy.
Questions have been asked of Iger that I don't think any of us could have possibly imagined. And you can see him getting rattled. He's getting hot under the collar. If you think that that's bad, what we've seen there, imagine what he's hearing in private.
Yeah,
exactly.
I mean, the shareholders meetings are becoming like Twitter rooms.
It's great.
Now, that you asked, is this fun? That's the fun part.
Sure, absolutely.
Well, let me introduce an idea, Lauren, on top of what you just said, and it's something I said in one of my recent videos. We're living in a world where Disney will not release a profitable film the entire year.
And may not next year until Deadpool 3, if it comes out on time, given the writer's strike. That's the craziness we're in.
And we don't know just how far these strikes are going to go and what exactly they're going to take with them. Because if you end up with 3 or 5 strikes simultaneously, which is potentially possible,
it's getting more and more likely every day now.
Nothing moves.
There has to be a point where we realize that this is not working. And like Lauren said, there is a difference between fiduciary and morally, driven initiatives. And the bottom line is they have taken and look, I'm not going to get political on your thing, WWW Pro, but I'm just saying.
We are a philosophical channel, indeed.
They are taking an initiative for a moral responsibility for a small minority of people.
Oh, in that case, that's not political at all. You're right. They've become cultists.
Yeah,
you can't say ladies and gentlemen anymore in their parks.
You have to make movies for everyone. You have to, because money comes from everyone. So if you want to make money, you have to get everyone in your theater. So there has to be a point, and this is what I'm talking about, where they admit their mistakes. They're never going to come out with a press release and say, look, guys, I think we, we took the progressive role a little too far. Let's roll it back to actually making movies that matter about it. They're never going to do that. But I will tell you right now, one solid movie where they don't do any of that stuff would do wonders for them. Wonders for them.
I'll even make a suggestion. I have one that I would like to see them remake because I think that it is beloved by people who saw it, but was maligned at the time and it had some issues. Do The Black Hole.
Yeah. I actually was going to say that you were going to.
That's the one I was going to say. Well
that's
done,
so funny. That is so funny that you have that one.
Yeah.
I'm so glad I didn't make that. I didn't make the reference that I was going to say it. I thought, there's a 1% chance he'll say Black.
There's not a lot of room for them to come out and talk about their failures, but they could fix it. I agree with Lauren, but look, they're not going to. They're not going to. They're hung up on dropping 50% of their audience in service of 1% of people that don't go to see their films often.
Well, so, do you actually? Are you of the belief that they are going to collapse as an entertainment entity?
I think they will have to suffer before they change. Disney is that oil tanker.
Aren't we there?
Yes.
Disney we're getting close. Disney is that oil tanker headed towards shore with no rudder action and no ability to turn the engines off. They're headed to shore. They can't turn it, and they are less than 5 miles out. It's over because at 18 knots, you can't turn that boat. They're going to hit something, and that's when you're going to get the change.
I submit they've already done it, and I submit that although I'm not here to give financial advice, and please don't take this as financial advice, I think a revolt inside the company, a revolt with the stockholders, something like that is
French
on the horizon.
Revolution. I'm talking guillotine in the boardroom kind of French Revolution.
Well, you don't go from being the biggest entertainment company in the world, and it took you basically a century to do it. And then you had a 10-year run as being the giant, unstoppable, golden goose producing mega company internationally, and then fall this far, this fast, without people saying,
You
Where
have to
did
be
my money
you
go?
have to be professionally incompetent to be able to do something like that. I know that's an oxymoron, but professionally incompetent.
That
Final
article,
thoughts, guys.
that
Go ahead,
article that we're referencing is an excellent article, and it actually looks like it was written by us. And I think that's another reason why something is different this time. The fact that you have major publications that are saying this in public. They say at the bottom of that article that Kathleen Kennedy's time is just about up. That's a
We
big
force
deal.
their hand. They have to rise to our quality now that we've introduced it to the world.
We warned you.
That's right. Culture, last thought on this one.
I think you guys are all right. There
Thank
is
you. That'll do it. No, just stop right there. I love the way that ended.
there is something very different, and it's not just in the Fortune article, and it's not just in the pieces we've seen from the Journal, and it's there. You're seeing a shift in coverage, not just around Disney, but in other places as well, and it's out of a desperation for revenue, which they used to be able to afford to ignore. The investment capital's dried up. The gifted money is going away, and now you're either going to have to make a decision to desperately cling to that ESG score so that you can continue to have investors despite losing loads of money, or you're going to have to turn it around and become profitable. And you're seeing those sides form right now. You're seeing it in the media spaces.
Stage 4 culture.
I know. Did you read the Collins book yet?
Yeah, well, I've gotten a little ways into it, but
Okay.
yeah, stage 4, not stage 5.
Yeah, we're close. 5. We're close.
X-Wing, where can people find you on this great, big, beautiful web out there?
You don't want my opinion, just the channel.
Well, you can give your opinion, sure.
No, it's fine. No, okay.
Well,
I honestly, the only way I can see this, and like I said, I'm not a financial channel. I don't look at the numbers like you guys do. I can only look at the writing on the wall to the left and right of me and come up with an opinion. And the writing has been there for a very long time. And the rich, spoiled kid at the high school, Disney, has not been looking at the writing at the wall. He hasn't even, just blinders on, walking down the hall with his Letterman jacket. Everything's fine. Everything's going to be fine. All of a sudden, they're faced with a very scary reality for them that what you are doing is not working. You're losing money. Investors are maybe not even scared, but just pissed at this point. Investors are pissed. You're closing down this massive, I call it the ideological hotel, because it was a terrible idea. We've got this great idea. It was a bad idea. Nobody told them it was a bad idea, except for us. And they've refused to look at the writing on the wall. They won't listen. And now they have no choice. They're confronted with this ugly reality. And all they can do is just start dumping, running, being like, what the hell are we going to, I don't know. We're going to buy Hulu. Let's buy Hulu. I don't know. That might get us out. How do we buy Hulu? I don't know. Start throwing shit off the ship. I don't know. Do something. It is hilarious to watch for me. And like you said, I wish no ill will on anybody at that company. I don't want to see anybody lose their job. But there's a part of me that is smugly sitting in the corner like, told you.
Told you so. All right, X-Wing, where can people find these truth bombs from you? I'm sure you're going to continue dropping them.
My name is X-Wing. The channel is X-Wing 5, like Red 5, X-Wing 5. I am a terrible YouTuber.
Oh, after what you've just done, no, I think you had the audience applauding at that moment. Culture, where can people find you?
Easy. Culture Casino at YouTube, Odyssey, Rumble, Minds, Twitter. I don't know, the phone book.
GeoCities.
Yeah, you ask Jeeves. That's all.
There you go.
There you go.
Lauren, where can we find you on this great, big, beautiful web? And please include your MySpace as well.
Oh, geez. I don't even remember what it was. You can find me at that park place. You can find me here streaming with you. You can find me on the chat on Valiant's channel when he does his stream on Sundays. You can find me at Lauren Connor on Twitter or at Lauren Connor 9030 at YouTube.
All right, folks, the conversation here is done, but the conversation with all of you begins now. Have you been jumping up and down? Have you been applauding as X-Wing tells you what it is straight to you? Or have you been yelling at the screen telling us we're a bunch of dummies, we're not seeing what the truth is? Well, tell us now. Put it in the comments. We cover your comments. We care about what you think. And if you like content like this, consider clicking the like button, share, subscribe, and stick it to the algorithms. When you click it, we're talking about the notification bell. Wherever you are, whatever you're doing, keep learning, keep growing, and keep having fun.
Make sure to catch The Pro Show Thursdays 5 to 7 Eastern Time. Entertainment Explained, The Culture Curve Conquered, live with Pro and all his friends.